Well, folks, I have a great show, and Lou Calabrese is with me today. And Lou is a longtime listener, and he's also been in the music industry for a long time. Lou comments a lot on the content that I put up, and he was originally supposed to join us with the show that I did with Paul and Doug, but we had so many connection issues, and I promised Lou that we would catch up and get him to join me on the show and to talk about the music business a bit and his experiences. So, Lou, welcome.
Hey, Mike. How's it going? Great to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And like I said, Lou, I do appreciate all of your input on the YouTube channel and your comments. They're always very insightful. What got you interested in music? What sparked you to get into music?
It was when I was about 2 or 3 years old. My parents bought me my first Beatles album, the Beatles' second album, and I remember listening to that when I was probably about 3, I guess, around 3 years old, and that's pretty what got me started. That's what got me influenced from that. From then I grew as everybody else, like any other teenager, listening to rock and roll records, all the classics from the 60s and 70s. That's how I got into it. That was the initial introduction. My parents bought me the Beatles' second album.
I think that the Beatles' second album on Capitol, my personal opinion is that is probably one of the best Beatles albums from the early period. And I'm talking about even when I lay it up against the UK releases. That was a great album. And I'm probably going to get some comments where people are going to disagree. But like I always said, music is subjective. So that's my personal opinion about the Beatles' second album on Capitol in the U.S.
And being a 3-year-old, you're a lot more impressionable, having virgin ears to rock and roll music or records. That's like your first impression. I'm like, wow, it's like being weaned on Beatles, literally. That's basically how I got it. I didn't hear them on a radio and say, oh, Mom and Dad, I want that record. Buy me the record. It's like, they bought it and it was in a record player. There you go, little Lucci. Listen to that. By the way, that's my nickname, Lucci, since I grew up. I'm also known as Lucci Calabrese in the business, or ex-business.
Age 3, you got me beat, that's for sure. So then how did it progress from there? You had your teenage years growing up. Were you in bands? Were you doing recording? Were you thinking in terms of engineering in the music business? What were the teenage years like?
Well, the next introduction or influence was maybe fast forward a year or 2 later when I was about 5. My mom took me to our cousin's house in Bay Ridge in Brooklyn. And my cousins were just a few years older than myself, but they had a band downstairs in their basement. And my cousin Johnny had this Ludwig Red Sparkle drum kit, and I was just blown away. I was like, wow, cool, real drums. And I'll never forget, Red Sparkle. I just remember that for some reason. And my other cousin Neil, and the 3 of them had this band. I don't think I remember seeing them actually playing. Maybe they did, being kids. They were probably if they were about 5 years older, they were probably about 10 or 11 years old. But that was my first introduction into being in front of a real band, so to speak. When you're a little kid, it's like, wow, real drums, cool. It's a big deal when you're 5. But that was my introduction. And then growing up in New Jersey, outside Atlantic City, I was buying, all the classic records and just loved listening to them. And I just would listen to them and just visualize the music. I was just becoming infused with it, wanting to become a part of it. Well, my cousin gave me his old Gret kick and snare drum with a hi-hat and crash cymbal when I was 14. And I took that home to my Atlantic City home and just started playing drums to Beatle records and all the others on a cheap stereo, just kick and snare and hi-hat. And that was when I was 14. A couple years later, I saw an ad in the paper for a 5-piece drum kit, Ludwig. And I asked my dad, please, 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 I want this. Look, it's really cheap. And he called a friend of his, John Antonelli. He was a big drummer at my dad's old nightclub in Atlantic City, the Five Fire Club. But anyway, since I was just a kid, my dad says, wait a minute, let me call an old friend of mine. So since my dad was a manager, he knew all musicians that played there. So he calls his drummer, John Tonelli. I said, hey, can you take my kid, check this drum kit out if he wants to buy it? And sure, he took me. We drove over, saw the kit. He actually talked the guy down, saved me money. Remember, I got it for $250. This blue silk, brand new Ludwig 5-piece kit. And that got me into music as part of it, being a drummer. That's all I wanted to be at the time. My influences were Keith Moon and Ginger Baker. They were my favorites. I loved to emulate. And then I would jam with high school friends, they had guitars and basses, and they'd bring them over. We'd jam either in my bedroom or in my garage later on when I converted it into a little makeshift studio. And I did that for a few years until I was, in 1981 when I was 20. I wanted to be more than a drummer because I wasn't quite as serious or dedicated as a musician. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't really, I wanted to be more than that. So I bought a Tascam 4-track reel-to-reel. I think, was it the 3440? And long story short, I got the 4-track, and I bought, I got compressor, DBX compressor, and a couple little outboard gear things, minimal stuff, and some mics. Long story short, I invited my musician friends over after converting my garage into a studio, and just recorded them on 4-track, just drum kit, guitar, and bass. Lo and behold, it came out pretty cool. I didn't really know what I was doing other than reading books and from magazines. That was the only experience I had, just two-dimensional. But since I got to put things together, I was just learning as I go, so to speak. And that eventually got me into turning that into a whole studio. Over time, I worked as a parking garage attendant around Atlantic City Convention Hall, made a lot of cash and a lot of tips, and invested all that money in recording equipment. Sometimes if I didn't have as much money, my dad was kind enough to loan me money, never asked me to pay him back, which was a great dad to have for that support. But I eventually bought an 8-track Atari half-inch analog 8-track and a bi-amp 16 by 4 by 2 mixer and speakers, and, MXR outboard gear, a whole bunch of great microphones at the time, Sennheisers, AKGs, Sony, Shure, all the good ones. And then started recording. I just wanted to do it just for entertainment, just for my own satisfaction. But in the back of my mind, as I'm recording friends, I started getting a reputation, and their friends heard the tapes I was recording, and they would ask me to record them too. So I said, well, okay, if you want me to. It beats parking cars, so okay, sure, I'll do it for $15 an hour. I started recording local bands for a little bit, and then City Hall, some guy from City Hall, this inspector, showed up one day just laughing his butt off. I'm like, what's so funny? He just introduced himself. I'm so-and-so from City Hall, zoning ordinance officer. I'm like, what's that? And I got a lesson real quick that all this construction work I did with my own hands on the garage part, I had to tear it all down. It was a 1-car garage, A-frame, cinder block, and I took the roll-down door off and extended that front part just with a cinder block foundation and 2x8s, lumber, and just did it myself with common sense. And I extended it a couple feet longer, and that gave it more space. But the big thing that got me in trouble was I was doubling the size of the garage by adding by 10 by 12 foot drum booth, laid out in the grass. The foundation was cinder blocks. I just dug holes, put blocks in, and just used common sense and did it real well, and built, 2x4 walling and stuff. And long story short, I had the room virtually attached to the garage, and then I took a hammer and chisel and just knocked out the cinder blocks in the middle. Just enough not to make everything, the whole garage cave in on me.
Yeah.
But it stood. And I was getting that far. I'm like, great, now I have a drum booth so I can isolate the drums. Great, this is going great. And then that's when I got a lesson in zoning. But yeah, it was a zoning thing. So he ordered me to tear everything down, breaking my heart. And not only that, he said I had to cease and desist from using my garage other than, parking a car or storing paint cans. So you can't use it for your hobby. I'm like, what?
Why not?
That was the ordinance, the city ordinances. If you want to convert, you got to get, permits and apply to ask, all this, city hall zoning ordinance crap. Like, they're not going to let me do that because he said it's zoned just for, for storage or parking a car. And that was the basic. So I didn't give up. I thought right at the same time, that's when MXR came out on the market with their drum machine for $900. And I bought that. I'm like, okay, well, this solves the drum problem. I don't need a drum booth that I had to tear down. Now I'll just, program drums. So I learned how to do that and started doing tracking in my bedroom only, which was a converted control room. Before I had to tear the garage down, I had a snake cable, like 16 channels. I made all the cables from Radio Shack equipment, wires and connectors and stuff, and ran all these cables through a piece of plumbing tubes. You know, it was sewage tube, this 4-inch black thing, but very flexible, made for sewerage underground. But I'm like, well, it's great. I just needed to protect my cables, weather resistant. So I ran this real ugly thing out my second floor bedroom window into the garage window. And it created quite an eyesore. Neighbors would complain, like, what the hell is that thing? What the hell is he doing in there? What do you think I'm doing? That got me in trouble at City Hall, too, you know, because they complained of eye issues.
So it sounds like one of your neighbors turned you in.
Well, one of them wasn't really friends with my dad, but I guess he just held a grudge because later on, I guess he found out that my dad was connected with the 500 Club in Atlantic City, which was known for its Italian subculture. You know, mentioned on the Sopranos and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I
which
got
is
it.
true, but that's a whole nother story. So I didn't give up. You know, it was the early 80s, and techno was just coming in the music scene, and I love techno music, Eurythmics, Giorgio Moroder, well, you know, all the electronic drum stuff that was just coming out, you know, pop music. So I adapted. I just adapted that when I was happy. I just wanted to record music. So I got the MXR drum machine. I do programming. A friend of mine introduced me to a friend of mine who ended up being my music partner for many years. And mainly I was using my studio for he and I to record our songs and demos. Well, it was basically his music. I would collaborate, but I was more a drum programmer, synth sound programmer for him to play keyboards on. And I acted as producer, engineer, all that stuff. And he was the singer, songwriter, guitar player, very talented, great voice, great rock and roll guitar player, great blazing lead solos, everything. And I said, hey, man, you want to record? And I'm like, yes. So we ended up recording together, just became a team, and that lasted for years. But in between that, I was recording local bands would come over to my house. They'd have their music, their song prearranged. You know, they'd pay me to record them. And these were real bands. And of course, I couldn't do real drums, so they would come over with their arrangement. And I'd sit down behind a drum machine and I write down, you know, on the paper the arrangement they have, blah, 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 program it into the drum machine. And then once that's done, lay the drums down on tape, and then let the band do their overdubs, guitars and keyboards, and finally vocals, lead guitars and stuff. So that's how I acted at a virtual 8-track studio without having a live studio to record bands. But, you know, let me emphasize, they came to me. I didn't ask them, and I was happy to do it because, sure, it would be, you know, parking cars at 20 degrees below zero in February, middle of winter. But
what were you charging, Lou?
At the time, $15 an hour. That included, you know, tracking everything, tracking, mixing, you know, well, I think I did cassette copies like for free.
That's cheap. Wow.
$15 an hour because that was my time, whether I was tracking or mixing.
Yeah, well, you were a deal. You know, I was going to studios back then, workshop recording studios in Douglas and Queens in the early 80s. Boy, I think that was about $75 an hour, but it was 16 track.
Yeah, 16, yeah. Back then, 16 tracks a big difference compared to 8.
But the 8-track studio I was going to, Multisound in Queens, New York, the guy that ran it was a guy by the name of Dave Weiner. Dave was such a great guy, and I found out about a few months ago that he passed away 6 years ago. I couldn't believe it. Dave was a great guy. He was a great sound engineer. He had a great ear. He went to Juilliard, so his musical training was top-notch, but I think he was charging for 8-track about $40 an hour. So, like I said, you were a deal.
But did he have a live room in addition to the control room? Like record real bands, you know, live drums and amps and all that too?
He did.
See, I was limited on that. I didn't have a live room.
Oh, gotcha.
I could only do... See, so they're like, you know, it's like, well, there's one arm cut off, technically, you know,
yeah,
track-wise, so to speak. So that's a big deal. Yeah, if I had a live room, heck yeah, sure. I could have charged double too, but, you know, City Hall took care of that problem for me, you know, conveniently.
$15 even without the live room for the work you were doing was a good deal.
I must have been doing pretty good because they kept coming back. You know, it was like, okay, sure. And I got to know like 3 or 4 different bands, maybe 5 altogether, steady clients.
How did things progress with your music partner then? How long did that run? How did it go?
We first recorded his music with a couple other musicians, a drummer and bass player. So it was a trio when I still had my garage set up. That was in September 81. I did it on the 4-track. And then after I got my 8-track, like a year later, in 83, we recorded again since we had 8 tracks and recorded his music. And all I did was contribute just the engineering and just maybe some synth sounds. But everything else was his. I didn't give my input on it. It's just him and the drummer and bass player. But I did tell the drummer, I said, his name was Paul. I told him, hey man, play something linear like Terry Bozzio for Missing Persons. I thought that was really cool. I was into like a real techno phase, and I thought that linear playing was cool. So he did that to Keith's guitar work music, and then we recorded it. That was around May of 83. Fall of 83, that's when I first got in. My partner and I first became a collaborative team. I just did a drum track, and I just made some guitar chords on it and bass, just some grunge, punky sound thing with the eighth notes on the floor tom. Anyhow, I did all that, and all I had to do was come over and sing, and that was the first thing we did together. And he did this great rock, this English voice, we're just goofing off, but it worked. And then after that, we became a team, and I'd invite him over, and he was the writer, singer, guitar player, keyboard player. I programmed the drums. I programmed the synth sounds from the play. I did all the engineering, production work, and that's how we worked. We did that. We started doing that on a steady schedule from end of October 83 till I finally sold everything, which was probably spring of 87 before I moved to Hollywood, to Los Angeles. So for about 4 years we did it, and over that time we probably recorded, I remember he says, dude, we got like 100 songs here. Let's see, what we would do was his idea. He would take the same backtracks we did for one song and do a whole different melody on it, whole different harmonies. So that would count as a whole different song technically, even though it's got the same drum track and bass line and whatever. But, you can do variations like that when you write, when you know music. And then I decided, made the next move to finally want to go to Hollywood after that, or at least to professional studios.
And then you closed up shop, Lou, and then went out to the West Coast?
Exactly. Well, I had a little bit of motivation because other musicians had the itch to move out there too. A bass player and a drummer player, friend of mine, they wanted to move out too, had the same itch to move out there. They were serious musicians, very talented, and wanted to go the next step. And like, okay. So we kind of basically all moved out around the same time frame. So at least we all knew each other. We didn't know anybody out there, with the exception of one older musician named Sunny. She moved out a few years before we did. And she had one contact in the music business with Stanley Clark. She grew up with him from the Philadelphia neighborhood. That was the only professional contact we had. And she eventually hooked up my bass player friend with Stanley, and he became one of Stanley's proteges. Stanley would hook him up with gigs, and he became pretty successful doing tours with big artists, R&B artists. So he made a name for himself. When I moved out, at least I had some courage. At least I had a couple of buddies moving out there, so I wasn't quite alone. So that was, comforting a little bit, considering I'm moving 3,300 miles cross country, not knowing anybody, literally.
Now, did your music partner go out there with you or no?
No, he decided to get married and then have a baby. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? So he stayed back in Jersey, lived with his parents, at his parents' house. He had a huge house there outside Atlantic City. But I'm like, dude, I'm going. I'm taking our tapes. Okay, I got our tapes. When I connect, I'll give you a call, okay? Anyway, so that's when I moved. I still want to do it. I accomplished, in the back of my head, what, at least the first part of my big plan. At least, well, if I'm going, I need some demos to show this is what I do. And I had some demos. I bought a Sony Walkman, so if I ever run into an engineer, producer, I've got a Walkman on me. It's like, hey, we don't need a studio here. I got a Walkman. Just put the headphones on. Listen. I got there in the first week of July. My dad drove out with me. He got me some furniture, made sure I was set up because he couldn't believe what I was doing. He couldn't believe I sold all this stuff, pennies on a dollar, and going out cross country. He thought I was crazy, but I still had his support because I told him I had a plan. I got everything written down. I know what I want to do, know where the studios are to do it. So it's just a matter of time. I'm knocking on doors. And if things don't turn out after a few months, I'll just get a regular Joe job like I had once in Atlantic City, as a mail clerk at a county office building for a year. So I don't care, whatever it takes,
Lou, was your plan to get the music sold, or was it more about moving toward doing sound engineering and possibly producing?
It was. I had to use the engineering part. Well, the engineering part to support the producing part. Since I'm nobody just walking into town, I can't say, "Hey, I'm Luigi Calabrese. I'm the one to produce here." You just don't walk into Warner Brothers and say
Right.
that, you know. So I'm thinking practical, realistic. So I loved engineering, and that was my dream. I had, engineers I looked up to, like Hugh Pagam. I had a list of studios. I figured, let me get my resume, and I'll be knocking on doors saying I just, looking for a job as an assistant engineer, because at least I know the roundabouts, all the basics of a studio. Whether it's 8-track or 48-track, the basics are still the same. It's just getting acquainted with the equipment. So I figured I had enough knowledge and experience to at least be an assistant. So I started knocking on doors. I had a list of all the studios from each section, from Glendale to North Hollywood to West Hollywood to Studio City. There's like many little studios there, suburbs, each all within driving distance of each other, very short distances. So my plan was to hit each area at a time. Like for this week, I'll hit all the studios in West Hollywood. Then next week, I'll go to Glendale Studios. Then the weekend, if things don't click, that was my plan. Just hitting each area at a time. I was just knocking on doors, but I wanted to. I figured, let me get in the door, so to speak, as an assistant engineer. So I figured once I'm inside the business, that gives me more room and options. That's more practical than wanting to start as a producer. So that's the way I did it, approached once I got out there.
What got your foot into the door of one of the studios out there? What happened?
Boy, fate and being at the right place at the right time, unexpectedly. One of those stories, believe it or not, I couldn't believe it, but that's what opened the door to my whole career, 20 years later. I was just getting frustrated after hitting a lot of studios, and they just take the resume and they, don't call us, we'll call you. So after a few weeks or a month, I was getting a little disappointed. So I figured, let me just get a regular crappy job for something so I have some spending money, and I'll still knock on doors. At least I have some income. So I'm on my way to a mailroom job on the freeway, and halfway there, a little voice in my head said, "Oh, geez, we didn't come out 3,300 miles just to work in a mailroom again." And this little voice in my head said, get off the freeway, make a U-turn, let's go get something to eat, and give out some more studios, give out some more resumes to some studios. I wasn't going to give up the fight. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I'm like motivating myself. And that's what I did. So I went home, picked up some KFC chicken. I'm looking in the Mix Magazine studio addresses, and I happened to miss Giorgio Moroder's studio right here in Studio City, which was practically around the corner from North Hollywood. And I had already hit those studios in that area. I don't know. There's just some reason I didn't hit Giorgio's studio when I hit all the Studio City locations. So I figured, all right, I'll take a resume over. It's around 5 in the afternoon, the end of the day. What the hell? I've got nothing else to do, nothing to lose. So I go over to Giorgio Moroder's studio in Studio City. I park in the back lot, knock on the back door, and one of his engineers answers the door, and very rude. And he goes, "Yeah, what do you want?" And I'm real polite, explain myself. "Hi, I'm Lou Calabrese. I had a studio. I moved out here to further my ambitions as a studio assistant, and I'm looking for work." And before I can hand him a resume, he just grabs it out of my hand like a jerk. And I'm thinking, what a jerk. Anyway, it's like I'm in no position to argue. Whatever. Keep a smile, Louis. And he's reading it, and all of a sudden he turns to a friendly guy, complete opposite. He goes, "Oh, you're from Atlantic City. Me too." I'm like, "Oh, cool. Okay. Now you don't have to be such a dick." Okay. I didn't say that to him, but I'm like, phew. I wiped the sweat from my brow. Okay, well, that's all right. I didn't mind it. Hey, that's cool. So he goes, "Well, come on in." He goes, "I'll give you a quick tour, since we're home buds." And that was my introduction and my foot in the door, so to speak. He invites me in. It's a one-floor studio with 3 rooms. And he's taking me from room to room, from the main room, which I walk in, and there's Keith Forsey, famous producer, Billy Idol, and Psychedelic Furs, and Simple Minds, all these great English bands. And I didn't bother. I'm like, "Oh, wow, cool." And he's actually working on some Idol remix. Then my buddy takes me to the other room, and there's Ross Hogarth working on something for Giorgio, Studio 2. And then he go, "Okay, cool, nice." I don't say a word. And then he takes me out around, and then there's the reception people. Lori Howard, the studio manager, and George Nashke, Giorgio's music publisher, and Cecile, the receptionist. Oh, hi, how you doing? Yeah, nice to meet you. Okay, and then Dave goes, come on, go to the other room. And then he takes me in a smaller room, which was all Giorgio's synthesizer room, his writing room, with a small console, but all these Yamaha sound modules. I think they were TX-812s at the time. But yeah, I was like, cool, this is where Giorgio writes. I'm like, cool. Anyway, after he gives me the tour and we chat, and he discovers we're old, hometown buddies, hometown people from the same place. He goes, I can't give you a job, but you're welcome to hang out. So I'm like, great. And so that night, I tell my dad, call him in Atlantic City, and my dad asks what the guy's name is. And I said, oh, come on. What are you going to tell me? You know him? Come on. And he goes, no, what's his name? I said, well, all right, Dave Concourse. My dad goes, ask me if he knows more or Eddie Concourse. Oh, come on. And tell me he knows them. My dad goes, no, just ask him. All right. I'm going tomorrow. I'll do it. So I go back tomorrow and ask Dave, when I had the moment to chat. I'm like, you don't know more or Eddie Concourse, do you? He goes, yeah, it's my dad and uncle. Why? Anyway, long story short, I can keep going on with more details. It's an entertaining story. But to the point was, I found out, my dad tells me that he and his dad were best friends. And my buddy, he calls his dad in Utah to confirm all the stuff I'm telling him. He goes, yeah, that's Luch. Yeah, we used to be friends, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, Dave hangs up the phone, and he turns to me with a dead expression. He goes, my God, you mean I'm stuck with you now? And I said, well, yeah, like a hungry puppy. Yeah, you bet. If that's the way it's going to be, shit. Anywho, that was my introduction. And Dave got me, I think I had my first job at the studio was for Brian Wilson, booked a session coming in with his producer, that old psychiatrist. But they just needed someone to answer the phones and hang out, as an assistant if they need anything. I'm like, yeah, sure. And they got a real paycheck for that, just sitting there. That was my very first gig. Giorgio's, and I met Brian Wilson. He seemed real preoccupied, not really in touch with what he was doing. He seemed very distracted. That was my first job. The thing about Dave was he was like a big brother because he used to be the head tech over at Westlake Audio Studios where Michael Jackson did his first 3 albums. Anyway, he knew everybody there. So he said, go see, I forget her name, go see so-and-so, tell her I sent you and have her set you up with a job interview. That's all I can do for you. So that's what happened. He set me up like anybody else. At least I had, I knew a name to ask for, and that got me an interview, and the head runner there interviewed me. He liked me. I got hired, and that was my first step into the business, as a technical engineer part, not producing, but like I said, I just want to at least be practical, get a job, at least if I'm doing something technical, at least I'm in the door. I can worry about doing my own thing later, one step at a time. So that's how I got into business. Within a couple of months, I'm working at Westlake as one of the gopher runners. And in between, we're invited to learn, technical stuff. And that's how I got started doing setup for the sessions. One of the techs showed me how to align the 2 tracks and the multi-tracks and, plug the multi-tracks in with all the harnesses and how to calibrate them. And, they taught me I got on-a-job experience. And that's how I became a tech. I'm like, great, now that I'm doing something functional, at least, I'm doing that. And then I got my tapes on the side for my partner and I, and then I'll pursue that on the back burner. At least let me get some, a foothold in the bit inside. That's how that started. And then musically, my opportunity for a big break came when I was hanging out at Giorgio Moroder's studio. And I was in the main room, and there's my buddy Dave working with Keith Forsey, the producer, doing something. I don't know what they're working on. And then they took a break, and Keith turns to me and says, so, anybody got any demos? I'm like, yeah, I do. So I run out, and he goes, go get it. So I run out to the car, bring it back, and he's listening to one of the demos I did with my music partner in Jersey. And he's getting into the beat of it, but the melody wasn't quite professional. We were only kids from Jersey, so, we weren't that experienced. Keith Forsey just takes the melody and he's singing over my partner's vocal on a cassette playing. It's like he's structuring the melody to be more, on the beat or more professional sounding. And he's doing it while he's snapping his fingers inches from my face. And I'm thinking to myself, holy crap. we worked that hard, and I'm finally here with a real producer who's giving me a chance to listen, and he's guiding me how to improve it, how to, bang it into shape, more professional pop sounding. Whoa. I'm thinking this to myself, this is great. So I called my partner and told him, told him what I'm doing. I'm like, dude, I'm getting there, man. This is Billy Idol's producer. So, I'm just hanging out, letting you know, calling in, just keeping in touch, how the war is going, so to speak. These are today's reports from the war. Just letting them know how, what things are going. Like, it's looking good. It's looking good. We're getting that much closer.
So was he still plugged in, Lou? What was your partner? What was his first name?
Keith. Same name, Keith.
When you're giving him these updates now that you're out there, is he still plugged in, or is he more into the whole family thing?
He's doing a family thing, but if I click and I get this match to light, hey, man, you're only a plane flight away. So, he just stayed in Jersey, and then I'm still working on my own, trying to do whatever I can to get inside. And, I wanted to solidify, at least get some, at least as an assistant engineer or as a technical engineer. And then at the same time, while I'm in that, at least then I can focus on other connections or opportunities, music-wise and producing-wise, if they come about. And you only get those, just by hanging out. It's like, if you want to change, you just got to hang around, and eventually, you'll get called for something. Opportunity will call, and that's how breaks happen. So that was my thinking. I'm like, it's okay. So, it's okay. I'm meeting producers. I'm rubbing shoulders. I'm setting up their machines. At least I get to, see them. And, it's only a matter of time. Maybe I start conversing with one or just befriend one. You never know. That's how things happen. And I did that for years at Westlake, a couple of years till around 89, a little over 2 years. In May of 88, Billy Idol was started to track his album, The Charmed Life CD. In May of 88 was when they were trying out a new studio, and my buddy Dave was telling me, he said, he said, hey man, it looks like they're going to hire me to be the engineer to track Billy's new album. I'm like, cool. And of course, me, since we're, like brothers, I was like, hey, do you think they'll let me hang out? And he goes, well, I don't know, I'll ask him. I'm like, okay, cool. So I let it be, let him just, take time to hear back. And like a week later, he goes, yeah, I heard from Billy and Keith. He said, you're cool. You're welcome to hang out when we try out the studio, session next week or whenever that was, back in May of 88. Billy liked the studio, and so they took roots there to start tracking for his, Charmed Life album. And since they let me hang out there as a guest, so I was like a fly on a wall, hanging out every day in the control room, literally inches behind their shoulders, right behind the console, and studying Keith's production techniques. For example, Billy Idol didn't have much material. I think he only had like a couple song ideas at best. So he would take like a 4-bar idea and play it for Keith, either on a cassette or on acoustic guitar, right, face to face. And then Keith Forsey, the producer, was responsible for taking just that 4-bar lick and transposing it into like a whole 20-piece arrangement, music arrangement, 20 sections or whatever. That's what I was learning. I was like, that was one example how I learned about music arranging. I just watched how Billy would give Keith a simple idea, just 4 bars, couple chords, and then Keith would take that and have to do variations, quote unquote, to break it down into what looks like an arrangement, to build a song on from. Once you have a foundation, then you can do variations, and that's one of the great things I learned, because me being one producer, even though I was in Jersey and had all this stuff, I was still very green, and what the hell do I know other than listening to records? I'm just a fan listening that enjoys it, but I never had no formal training, anything like that. I didn't take music lessons. I hated the idea of music lessons. I actually did take one for drumming, and with the snare book John Tonelli wanted to teach me to do. Like, it goes left, right, left, right. I'm like, what the hell's this? And I put in the Cream album. This is what I want to play. I don't go like I'm in a parade. See, anyway, that was the end of lessons. I said, oh, forget it. I'll figure it out. I'll just figure it out on my own. I was only limited with my music knowledge. And then finally watching the big picture, how a producer takes just a song idea and then does the hammer and banging of it into variations, which make arrangements, sections for a song. And that's what I was doing for about a year, just hanging out like a fly on the wall, watching this and soaking up knowledge I learned. I didn't realize how much I didn't know. It was like, a chance of a lifetime, for like, let's say you wanted to be a magician all your life, and you finally get your chance to hang out with Houdini backstage, and the master's showing you how the trick is done. And that's how I started developing my musical education for dynamics and song arrangements and variations, watching a professional do it, who was kind enough to let me sit behind his shoulders, read his notes when he'd take a break, and go down his legal pad of notes and read it. I'm used to, 7 or 8 sections in an arrangement when I used to work with my partner in Jersey. This guy's got like 20 pieces, like, holy shit. But I'm understanding now how he's doing it. So I did that. I'm soaking up knowledge, my production knowledge. I'm learning music theory. My weak points, I'm learning.
So Billy Idol came in with an idea or a fragment of a song, and then Keith Forsey sat down and essentially wrote the song.
He did the arrangement, and then Billy would just do the lyrics where lyrics were needed to be composed.
But didn't Keith actually have to write the song? Because if Billy comes in with 4 bars...
Yeah, I think I know Keith Forsey got writing. He's a writer himself. He wrote one hit that's on rotation in this day, like by Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me. Everybody knows that song from The Breakfast Club, Don't You Forget About Me.
Great song.
Great, and that's one of my favorites. But that's him. The guy's got talent. Not only can he write, but he knows how to produce it, arrange it. But yeah, he would, I don't know, I can't remember. I'm sure he shared writing credits. I don't know how he worked out with Billy or points on a record or whatever. That's between them. There's different ways you can work it, but I'm sure you might see his name, as part of getting writing credits. But yeah, all that stuff, that's him. He's the guy. That's not Billy. But the audience thinks, oh, Idol's so talented. That's the way producers work. That's a producer's job. For example, here's a perfect example. I couldn't believe it when I started, becoming hip to how the business works, which was kind of making me sad. I thought it was about music. Once you become a star, you have the freedom and liberty to do your music, because that's music, not prefabricated, stuff you expect. So here's the example. Billy brought in a demo he did on his home studio, multi-track. He brought his cassette in. It was just drum machine and bass guitar. He played himself, and a guitar thing he played, overdubbed, and the vocal. And he brings the tape in, and it's a great sound and song, a great rockin' song. It had essence to it, just that rawness, but it had the soul. And so I remember he finally played it for Keith. I remember this. Billy comes in, we were taking a break in the back, and he goes, yeah, I played it for Keith, and he's not feeling it, or he said, yeah, he's not liking it or something like that. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That's great. I think you should put that demo on the album just the way it is. I mean, that's rock and roll. Come on. And then I finally got the moment, to actually talk to Keith Forsey face to face when the opportunity came, where it was like a Friday night party, everybody's relaxed, and I finally had the chance to approach him. So I approach him. He's all loose and feeling good and stuff from partying, and I feel okay and brave. And I walk up. I'm like, Keith, man, why don't you put that song on the album just the way it is? And he goes, no, it's not Idol. It's not Idol. Not Idol? That is it. Duh. That's not what he meant. What he meant was that's not Idol, the image.
Right.
It's his job, the producer, to do the image.
The brand, because it's a business.
Business. That's why they call it music business.
Lou, did the song that Billy wrote, did it make its way onto the album as a track?
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah. I think it was Trouble with the Sweet Stuff. That could have been it, because there's on the published version on the CD, it like breaks down into halftime, and the demo is just straight forward beat, boom, pop, boom, pop, boom, pop.
Yeah.
And Billy's playing a rhythm guitar right in it, and it's cool. It's got a good tempo. But, I guess, Keith Forsey didn't see it as Billy Idol, quote unquote. So getting back to your point, and to tell all your listeners, that's the way it goes in the music business. It's not just because you're an artist, you do it, and then they accommodate to all your ideas. It's, if you have the ideas, a lot of that work is, the producer. And I give credit to Dave the engineer, because he was a great engineer. I learned a lot about him technically. He was like a minimalist, and he got great sounding drums the way he tracked them with simple Shure 57 mics on everything. I couldn't believe it. Minimal EQing and just a little bit of compression. You put the, mic the kit up, a couple overheads, kick, snare, toms, blah, blah. And, I'm like, Dave, how'd you do it? He goes, not much. Cause when we took a break, I'm like, how are you getting that great sound? He explained it to me. So again, I'm learning firsthand from a guy that's engineered, did track Billy's previous couple albums. He also did Whiplash Smile, and he worked on Rebel Yell. So he and Billy and Keith have a history, as a team, engineer, producer, artist team going back years. So I was very fortunate to be there. And at the time, I wasn't a Billy Idol fan at all. I really didn't care about him. I thought he was a B rock star at best, but I never listened to him. And ironically, when my partner and I just met, started hanging out, he tried to turn me on to Billy Idol's first record. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cool, whatever. He actually liked Billy Idol. So that's what's like pretty just blowing my mind. It's like, wait a minute. Looking at the karmic picture and the way destiny and the way things work, fusion, past, present, and future all together is like mind-boggling how destiny can work sometimes. It's like
Lou, do you have any personal reflections about your interactions with Billy Idol?
Yeah, he was good to me at the beginning. We met really great. Our first introduction was before he did the album, going back to, it was November of '87. Dave invited me to a Giorgio studio. He said, hey, you want to come hang out? Billy's coming in to do some overdubs for a radio promo. I'm like, yeah, sure I do. That was my first time. Actually, I had a chance to be there with him. So I go over there, hang out, and Billy had to come in and there was a song, Hot in the City, where the music takes a break, and on a record he shouts out, New York! So for the radio promo, he had to take that same song and mute New York, and then dub in, Oklahoma, L.A., Ohio, for radio stations, across the country. And that's what he was coming in to do. So I'm just, we're waiting. This is me and Dave, and Billy's late. And I decided to twist a joint. What the hell? And Dave's cool. We used to smoke weed all the time. So I'm just twisting a joint there in the control room. And all of a sudden, the big control door gets kicked open. Bang. And here comes Billy right there with all these chains hanging down, his leather jacket. He's got this huge joint the size of a cigar, half smoked. He looks over to his right, turns to me and sees me twisting a joint. He takes his joint out of his mouth, hands it over to me, and says, here, try this. And that's how we met. And so then, Billy and Keith went on to do their overdubbings for a few hours. And then since I knew Keith Forsey used Giorgio's studio, I'd see him there all the time, hanging out. And I'm hanging out, Keith's doing work. And that's how I got to befriend Keith, so he got to know me. He asked what Billy was like. Yeah, he was cool. The first meeting, I'd say we got off to a good start. And then fast forward, I think the next time I saw him was when it finally came out to the first day. They were trying out the studio. I think it was called Track Records on Vineland in North Hollywood, which is right down the street from Giorgio's studio. But anywho, they tried the studio. After they said it's cool for me to hang out, they had the live band. They were just rocking, playing, feeling the vibe, getting loose, just testing the waters of the studio, see if it was cool to do the album there. At the end of the day, as we're leaving, he goes, next time here we're together, I'll bring the pot. Next time we're partners in crime. I'm like, cool. Okay, you got it, champ. Yeah, cool.
The reason why I asked that is because I'm trying to figure out if he was smoking weed and stoned, what exactly was his role in the studio at that point?
Well, he was there. They were trying out songs with the live band, feeling the vibe of the room, the sound of the room. I guess, it's between him and the engineer and Keith, the producer.
Okay.
They're feeling out the studio, seeing is this where we want to do the album? Because we're going to be, we're looking for a home for the next year. We're going to be committed. Is this where you want to stay? So, they were trying it out. It's that kind of a thing,
Okay.
And so I guess they were just playing music and just feeling the vibe. They weren't getting to business and recording, songs. I think they were just, feeling out, the room, how it felt to rehearse in there, and how it sounded and stuff. And that's where they settled in to do the whole album. Every Friday night they decided to have a party. They would record Monday through Friday and end early Friday afternoon and then have a party. And his handler, Art Natoli, would be the guy to go get all the groupies and bring up the chicks to bring them over. He was like Billy's handler. Anyway, but Art, we're partying there and getting loose and stuff, and everybody's having a good time. And I start talking to one of the girls, and there's like maybe a couple dozen, because I'll be honest, that was another reason for getting in the music business, was meeting chicks. Who's going to say, no, I just wanted to be a musician? Oh, bullshit. You want to meet the chicks too? Come on. Come on. Be honest. We know it. I'm telling you, that's true. That was half the motivation. In L.A., the babes go, come on. The point is, I'm just talking to one girl, just being social, and Billy's talking to chicks and whatever, and everybody's doing their thing. And then Art comes from out of nowhere, and he goes, Luch, stay away from the chicks. They're for Billy. And I'm like, okay, sorry. And then Art goes away, and I'm thinking, what the fuck? Dude, you got to be kidding me. I'm partying with you guys with all these chicks here, and everybody's loose, having a great time, feeling good and everything. And now I can't talk to the chicks. It's like, what the hell is good's a party then?
It's not like the ladies were going to confuse you with Billy Idol, right? They knew who Billy Idol was.
Exactly, and there's like lots of them. Those are like what his girlfriend I'm hitting on. There's like lots of them, like at least a dozen. That was his job, getting the chicks. That's what handlers do. Oh, well, okay, whatever, because I really wanted to learn as much as I could. And how often you get a chance to learn from producers and, pop stars, rock stars that are actually doing it. You don't get many opportunities to do that. Eventually, I started seeing a real side of Billy. I'll just answer one more thing. The way they would treat girls, like innocent girls that were hanging out, was just uncalled for, unacceptable. It was brutal. For example, behind the studio, there was this nice woman, probably in her young 30s, like the spring dress type, long blonde hair, pretty girl, innocent type. She lived right behind the studio, and she would see us hanging out all the time. And then Keith Forsey started talking to her, and he invited her over to the party one night. And she comes over all dressed up in a nice spring dress, like she's going on a nice date. She's all happy. Well, a producer invited her over. She's thinking like she's the only girl that this producer talks to, real innocent girl. And he just starts being rude to her. And I won't get into the details, but, he's just asking her to do things, what you don't do, when you're talking to normal women, you just, unless they're groupie sluts. Once they did that, they kicked her out. They asked her to leave. I'm saying to myself, dude, Keith, what are you doing? You're breaking her heart. Man, I just felt so bad for her. I guess that was her introduction to the music business. That's what they're like. It's not so happy roses there. They're not, it's when you see their dark side, it's not so cool. But at the same time, it's like, well, I'm just here to learn music. I don't participate in that. I don't do it, but I just want to learn. And if I can use these contacts with my partner, music, and I can produce it, and that's great.
What happened, Lou, with your friend? The last time we spoke, you said that you guys had a falling out. So he betrayed you, right? So what happened?
Oh, big time. Everything was going great, and so it was spring 1990. He was having a falling out with his wife. And I said, dude, come on out, stay with me. Come on out here to my place in North Hollywood. Let's work on some demos. I'm right here in the circles of Keith Forsey and Billy Idol and Dave Concourse and everybody. Let's do some demos, and we might make something happen because I know these guys. Long story short, Keith takes a Greyhound bus out to L.A. I pick him up at the bus station. And I'm literally supporting him 100%. I'm letting him stay at my tiny little garage apartment. And I had a little studio with a Tascam 8-track cassette recorder, a couple of mics, and some outboard gear, a drum machine, and all we needed to keep making our demos. We're not making, CD masters here. We just need demos. And I've got everything we need. I've got all the great stuff to do the demos. One time after we got a bunch of demos, I had the chance to bring him over finally to meet Billy and Keith Forsey. And he just walks in like he's Jesus or something with his chest out, not saying a word, expecting everybody to serve him by his body language. And I'm just flipped out. I'm like, I can't believe he's doing this. We're right here with Keith Forsey. You don't get much bigger than that, dude. So long story short, he didn't make a very good impression with Keith Forsey and Billy. And unfortunately, shit rolls downhill, and that's going to make me look bad because I'm the one that brought him in here. But all this respect I'm getting from these guys now makes me look like a turd. Thanks, dude. And I even had Keith Forsey's respect when I played him my cassette demo a year prior, a couple years before that. He actually couldn't believe my home 8-track recordings were on 8-track. He swore I did them in a 24-track studio. I said, no, Keith, I appreciate it, but no, that's just 8 tracks. I just know what I'm doing. I know how to, multi-track. I know how to bounce tracks together and submix and all that stuff. That's why I'm here. I think I'm pretty good, but you're the judge. You just complimented me. That was the end of my reputation with them. So I still stayed with my partner, and then he taught his girlfriend how to play bass. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, this has become like a Yoko thing. Where did she come from, dude? This is just you and me. Now we got this paid Yoko, Linda McCartney thing. What the? They're lovers. They're like, love you. You can't separate them. Forget it. Forget it. He's hooked. Forget it. And then, long story short, I bought us some band instruments to. If you want to be taken serious with the record companies, you got to be playing live. I didn't want to be a drummer, but I know how to play drums. So let's rehearse and play at some clubs. What the hell? I don't care. So I bought the instruments for us to start rehearsing as a trio, him on guitar, her on bass, and I'm playing drums. And the son of a gun pawned all the instruments. And that was the last straw. I'm like, forget it. Dude, first of all, you're here with Yoko. And now you sold everything that I put out my own money for. I could have used that to buy food or whatever. Ended up going to Van Nuys Courthouse, small claims, just to sue him. Just small claims because I had the receipts. And fortunately, by fate, People's Court's producers get their shows from reviewing small claim cases. They read what the plaintiff said, and if they look controversial or dramatic, quote unquote, then they call up the plaintiff first and ask them, say, hey, they're from People's Court. We saw your case. It looks very controversial and great for People's Court. We'd like to have it on our show. I'm like, okay. The producers called him and they got back and they said, yeah, the defendant agreed. You can have it on People's Court. Wow, national TV, huh? Okay. So long story short.
And you won.
Yeah, I won. 9 minutes flat after it was edited, because I know from being there was a lot more stuff that went on, but I know that they edited it out. But yeah, the edited show was 9 minutes. I won in full. Judge Wapner said it was about credibility. He didn't believe a word my partner was saying, because, I'll give you the link so your viewers can watch it. It's entertaining. If you guys want to see what it's like, really.
Actually, I have the video, Lou. What I'll do is I'll just tack it on to the end of the show.
Yeah, you can see what happened. So that was the final straw, heartbreaking. It was like, Cain and Abel. Like, dude, we're brothers. So that was the end of that.
You actually continued to stay in the music industry up through 2006, correct?
Correct. I still worked in studios as a technical engineer, setting up the tape machines. I didn't really care about producing music because I had no music to produce, no one to work with.
But you ended up with Sony?
Eventually, yeah. I stayed in Hollywood and worked at Westlake Audio, and then after that, what did I do? I worked for another guy, Sylvester LeVay, who did B-movie and TV show soundtracks. I worked as his personal assistant at his home studio. And after that falling out, I just wanted to get away from Hollywood, just get the hell out of there. I was like, I'm done. I was so close to making it, and you just do that. So I went back to New York, went to my mom's apartment, took care of her, and I just got a job at a studio there for a year at Unique Recording Studios. And then I decided to move back after a year, saved up some money, and then went back. So this was in 91. I was in a studio at Unique for a year in 1991 for exactly 1 year. And then I moved back and to Woodland Hills. I moved in with some buddies of mine who we became roommates with. And that was a house in Woodland Hills in 1992. And lo and behold, I'm doing the same thing, knocking on studios again, trying to just, start from scratch one again. And fortunately, I got hired at Larrabee Studios, which, getting back to how karma and fate work, it used to be Giorgio Moroder's old studio that he sold, the first studio that gave me my break. So it's now Larrabee North. And fortunately, I knock on that place, like, yeah, I know that place. Let me go knock on it, because I know the place. I used to hang out here. And fortunately, the guy that answered was the head tech, Bruce Millett, real nice English guy, studio designer. He interviewed me, liked my resume, and hired me. And it's just weird. I'm having deja vu. Wow, I'm back at the same building, the same little building again. This is wild. So I stayed in the business as a technician, no musical ambitions other than just recording at home for my entertainment. So I just got hired at Larrabee for a couple of years, setups as a technical engineer for all the clients. Michael Jackson was working there too. He was one of their clients, as well as Prince, a few rappers, Snoop Dogg, was there at Larrabee. I saw him, met him in a parking lot once before he made it, I guess when he was still recording with. So I did that for a couple of years. Kind of was getting a little disappointed. It's like I didn't come out here for this at all. I had no family. My plans that I wanted to do all kind of, went crash and burn. So I finally, after I had enough, I worked at Larrabee for a couple of years and then packed up and moved back to New York again and went back to Unique Recording Studio. Got hired there for a couple of years as a technician. And then I had ambitions to want to, work in a bigger studio. And then I got hired at Right Track, right around the corner in New York, a big studio. I worked there for about 6 months until I blew a tape machine up one day. Lesson well learned. It's like I didn't know that the new Studers are not like old Studers, because the new Studers have microprocessors and you have to turn the machines off before you plug in sync and control cables, Louis. Well, I didn't know that. I figured old Studers, you can do that, not the new Studers. So I learned the hard way and plugged all these cables in without turning the machine off and blew out the microprocessor, which canceled a very important session. And the owner wasn't very happy because I just cost him probably thousands of dollars. So, that job didn't last. But then I got worked in the Calabrese show as a sound man just to do something. And that was a lot of fun down in the Village. Next summer, I called Sony, like it was in 1988, August of 88. I just called Sony Studios, just looking for work in studios. And fortunately, the receptionist, instead of transferring me to human resources, she transferred me right down to the shop, the engineering shop. So I spoke to the head guy. His name's John Williams. I said, "Hi, I'm Lou Calabrese. They transferred me here to the shop, but that's cool." I said, "I'm just, I just explained to myself and my experience. I'm a setup engineer. I'm looking for work." And he goes, "Yeah, we're doing some projects. Come on in for an interview." So fortunately, I went in for an interview. He hired me just for a temporary gig, just to rewire one of the rooms. It was just supposed to be for a few weeks, whatever. But fortunately, they liked the way I worked. And then they had another project. They were doing another room, had to renovate, rip out the old gear and put in all new gear with all the wires and stuff. So, and I was at Sony then. That was my final job in the studio until 2006. But yeah, my last 8 years, I worked at Sony as a setup technician, setting up the machines, calibrating Pro Tools for the sessions when Pro Tools were finally making their way on the scene. So, and at the same time, Sony, was about to close. There was rumors going around that it was going bankrupt. They were going to close it, sell the building. That was it. They gave me some severance pay, a few $1,000, and that was the end of my days in studios. That was in 2006.
It's a tough business. You know that, I know that. So what advice do you have for young musicians and people who want to get into the music industry? What should they be aware of? What should they know?
Oh, golly, it's totally different, monster now, totally different beast since my days. It was like, geez, looking back, I had it easy back then compared to today. So, but I would say be true to yourself, do only what you enjoy doing. Don't let anybody force you to do stuff that you're not comfortable with doing or you don't enjoy doing. Don't be forced to do anything. Just follow your heart, what you want to do. Things might look, rosy on the surface, but once you get into it, they're not so rosy. I'm not saying everything's like that, but it's just don't go in with expectations like, oh, I got to do is this, and that. You're going to get a good lesson in human behavior. That's one thing about the music business that taught me. You'd be surprised the way the nature of people are, the way they are. Not everyone, there's a lot of great people in it, but just be yourself, I would say, to tell people, follow your dreams and learn what you can on your own. Do it how you think you should do things. Because that's how I started, and I stuck to that code, and it got me the respect of a great producer. He really complimented me on my home cassettes. I'm like, well, that was a big compliment, and I was just doing it from the heart. And even he told me, his advice was the same thing. I asked him, and he said the same thing. Don't listen to anybody. Follow your heart. Do what you enjoy doing. Don't compromise. Don't sell your soul. Don't try to be somebody else. Even if you don't fit in with, everybody in the same room, you're not the same personality, then, if you don't feel comfortable, don't change. Don't sell yourself. Don't bend backwards And don't kiss anybody's butt, because it's true. Nobody respects an ass kisser. I don't mean to speak bluntly, but it's true. If you really want respect for somebody admirable, don't kiss up to them. You can get their respect in other ways, but don't be a butt kisser, so to speak. That's what I would say, because the last thing you got is your soul. Once you compromise and sell that, your integrity, well, what else have you got? If you can't respect yourself, who else is going to respect yourself? But, do what makes you happy. Go with your instincts, I would tell them. If you enjoy it, do it. Because that's how I started. I just did it because I enjoyed it. I loved listening to the Beatles. They got me hooked musically in the deep end, so to speak, where I literally wanted to become part of the music. It wasn't enough just to play drums. I'm like, I want to become immersed. I want to become morphed with the music. I want to be into it. Whatever that is, those vibrations, I want to feel it, what music is. It's actual vibrations you can feel. Just do what makes you happy, because life is short. Live long enough. If you're fortunate enough, you'll find out that money's not everything. It's not happiness. I wanted to make money and get a hit because at the time I wanted to buy my grandmother and my mom new homes or new apartments, because my poor grandmother, rest her soul, she lived in a real horrible ghetto apartment in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. Terrible place. And that was the main reason. That was my main half my motivation was I want to have a hit record, not for me to buy a big house, but to buy a big apartment for grandma so she could live like a human being for once. And the same thing with my mother. I wanted to get, at least set her up in an apartment with, nice aides and stuff and attendants or a nurse, whatever, so she could live like a human being. So that was my motivation for wanting to make money. And I was telling all my friends at the time, geez, $1 million is just one hit song away. All you got to do is write it. It can't be that hard.
Your advice to folks is great. To be true to yourself, those are great words.
That's the bottom line. One last thing I want to tell the audience, hey, I really do have a lot of experience. If anybody's out there that is doing music and they need any advice or opinions about their music or how to develop it, what state it's in, how to take it further, I'd be more than happy to give my opinion or guidance. So I do have a pretty good ear about music, arranging that is, and it can include my email address in it if they want to. I'm just saying I've had a lot of experience. I've been around a lot.
Yeah, not a problem. We'll add your email in the description box. So, folks, if you are a musician and a songwriter and you're looking for somebody to help you with some tips on engineering or producing, get in touch with Lou. So, Lou, I want to thank you again for coming on and talking about your experiences in the music industry. It's greatly appreciated. If you just hang on for a moment, what I'll do is I'll hit the recorder and I'll just chat with you for a minute.
Okay, I'll hold.
People's Court, case number 4740, Calabrese versus Dennis and Woodleaf for $2,500. All rise, please.
You may be seated. I know you've all been sworn. I've read your complaint, sir. You claim the defendants took some of your personal property, won't return it?
Yes, we agreed for fun to rehearse at his house with my instruments for recreation back in New Jersey. And since then, both of them agreed to move out, and I was moving out also, and they agreed to deliver my property as long as I paid them for the trailer hitch. They were driving out. Come January, I visited them and noticed that my equipment was at their house, and we discussed to get together again and
How
start
many
rehearsing.
guitars were there?
It was 1 guitar and 2 amplifiers.
2 amp. Okay. Go ahead.
And so several days passed, and I told them that I had an opportunity to rent the amplifiers out to make some money. And they told me that they moved the equipment because their landlord wanted to re-wax the floors. So being kind of suspicious, it didn't make sense why they would move the amplifiers, they told me, over to Paige's mother's house. And I said, why would you take it to her mother's house instead of just giving it back to me? And they said, oh, dude, well, we were in a rush when we had to get to work, blah, blah, blah. Everything starts
And
with
would they call
"Ah,
you dude?
Yeah, that's how he speaks. Ah, dude. So I said, told him I had a chance to rent these amplifiers out. And he said, okay, we'll get them back from her mom's house, come time of the session. So the day of the session, I go to his house.
What was the day of the session?
It was like the first week of February. I don't know the exact day. So come time for me to go to his house, pick my property up, it's not there. So I said I had a chance to rent it out and make, some good income. And he said, sorry, what we actually did was we pawned it, and we didn't want to tell you because we were short of cash. And incidentally, I said, what gives you the right to pawn my property, even if we're short of cash? And right before, in January, he was short of cash and asked me if I would loan him some money, which I did.
How much did you loan him?
$250.
What form did it? Was it cash or by check?
Yeah, cash. It was actually, cash. And so he paid me with a check, which later bounced.
Let me see the check.
And I asked him for it. And he said, we don't owe you nothing. And so I went to my accountant and got a copy of it. And I also have a letter
Not
here.
present again.
It was passed through twice, bounced 2 times, and I was charged a fee for that.
Did he loan you $250?
He gave me $250.
Why did you give him a check for $250?
Well, he was insisting that he was going to...
Oh, come on now. If you don't owe the money, if he gave you $250, you don't have to give it back. Why did you give him a charge to write out a check?
I gave him a check because he insisted that I write a check. I told him I didn't have any money in that bank account whatsoever.
But did you owe him $250?
No.
Yes, he did, Your Honor.
What was it for?
I didn't have any agreement with him.
You didn't have any agreement with him?
I didn't have any...
Did you get $250 in cash from him?
Yes, I did.
Why would he give you a gift of that?
Because we worked together for 10 years.
Did
He
you
was
have
the
his-
only one that made
Did
any
you have
money.
his guitar and 2 amplifiers?
He gave that to Paige and I as a gift back in October.
I never
He
gave
put
it
it
to
in
him.
our car in New York City. It stayed at my mother and father's house. Okay, it was our equipment. We
Why
filled
would
in
he
the
give?
warranty
What was the equipment
cards.
worth?
It's either $12.99 or $13.99 because he
I
took
have
the
the
receipt
receipt.
last time he was at the house. He took the receipt back.
This is the receipt when I bought it, and these are the receipts when he pawned it.
They were his originally.
He bought them in New York City
Why would he give them to you?
because we had worked together for years, and he had made all the money because he owned the studio.
We never made
equipment.
any money, Your Honor.
And I'm the one that never made any money.
He never even had a job for
So you
3
pawned the
years.
stuff?
It was our equipment. We were under the...
I said you pawned
Yes,
it.
I did. Yes, I did.
Because you felt it was yours.
Yes, because it was a gift.
When he gave you the gift, who was present?
I was present, Your Honor. He
Were they
bought
in
it.
the-
What is your relationship to him?
I'm his girlfriend. He bought us the
How long you been his
equipment.
girlfriend?
2 years, June 1st.
Were you there when he
Yes,
said
it was
this,
at Sam
this is
Ash.
a gift?
Yes, he bought it for us. He was telling us he was going to buy it for us
Why would I
a
buy
month
him a-
before he even bought it, saying that we were going to be in a band and he was going to buy us the equipment that we needed. And he bought himself a drum kit, which we drove out here with our equipment, which if we didn't, when we got here, we took the drum kit over to his house and kept our equipment. My sister is a witness she spoke to Lucci when he was at Keith's mother's house in New
Is
Jersey.
this your sister?
This is Cindy. She's
Step forward.
Yeah, I called my sister when she was in New Jersey to talk to her, and she goes, "Oh, Cindy, Lucci's here, and he knows you're on the phone. Do you want to talk to him?" And I go, "Well, okay." So he gets on the phone, and he starts telling me how he bought all this equipment, that it was coming out here, he was going to get a band, do I want to move in with them, and all this other stuff. And he told me that he bought the equipment and everything so that they could have the equipment. He told me that.
Did you tell her that?
Absolutely not. And here is a letter.
How do you get the $2,500, sir? You got $13.99.99
Right
for
here,
the
Your
equipment and $250 for that check. Where do you get
$13.99 for the 2 amps and 1 guitar, $260 for the bad check, and I was also charged a $10 return fee, which is right here in my statement.
All right.
$800 for loss of wages.
What's the loss of wages?
That's this letter right here. When I was under the impression that he was going to get the property back from his mother's house, I had a verbal agreement with his associate that I had a chance to rent him the 2 amplifiers for recording session. And since I turned up at the session empty-handed, I was put on a bad spot, as well as that person I had the agreement with.
This is a question of credibility.
We got this.
Sir,
Yes, okay.
what else do you want to show me?
Your Honor, I'm also suing for court costs. That's an additional $58.
Court costs are always awarded to the party who wins.
He's been famous for doing this in the past when he worked with me as a producer.
He sued you in the past?
No, but he was famous for, like, sending in copyrights, sending in checks that didn't even have an account.
How about you're giving him a check where it would bounce twice?
I tried to get the money into the bank to cover that check. However...
You haven't satisfactorily answered the question.
Your Honor.
Why don't you please be quiet, sir? You haven't satisfactorily answered the question as to why you would write a check for $250 when you didn't owe him a dime.
Well, because I felt like he acted like as if that I should give him something in return.
Return for what?
Okay, I don't know.
That's the point, sir. And I don't believe you. Just to be blunt,
right.
sir. Case is finished. Heard all the evidence I'm going to hear. To be perfectly blunt, I don't believe you, and that's what this case turns on. It turns on credibility. And I don't believe you, sir, because I don't. When you get $250 and write a check that bounces, you're repaying him for the $250, and you're telling me that was a gift. So I don't believe the other was a gift either. I believe you took his property and you pawned it. Judgment is for plaintiff for $2,459.99.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Doug Llewellyn talks to the plaintiff and the defendants about Judge Wapner's decision right after these messages.
Ross presents...
We'll be back for the litigants' reactions to Judge Wapner's decision right after these messages.
Barbara Boxer bouncing one.
Based on credibility, Judge Wapner finds for the plaintiff in this case, Keith Dennis, one of the defendants, just going to keep. How do you feel about that? The judge was pretty blunt. He didn't believe you at all.
I understand that. There's extenuating circumstances around that check that I don't want to talk about in court.
Why not? It might have helped your case.
No, it wouldn't help my case.
Make it worse, huh?
It could go either way.
Okay.
Because I don't have too many written agreements between him and myself, okay? And what I do have, I couldn't get a hold of in time to appear here today.
Well, how's your musical career going?
Well, I gave it up. I gave it up, yes. I've got a career job now at the bank, so I don't need to work in music. I don't need to wonder where the money's coming from.
Thank you very much. Officer Burrell is waiting for you to sign a few documents. Now the plaintiff is on his way out of the courtroom. You feel better now?
Sure.
I mean, these were friends, right? Good friends.
Friends for 12 years. He always pulled little lies in the past that I was willing to overlook until it got to this where it was so ridiculous and unnatural. I just had to do something about it. You know, how many times can you forgive a friend and be slapped in the face and, look the other way? I only have so much face left, and I got to say what I got.
Okay. How's your musical career going? You still trying?
Sure, as a hobby, yeah.
Just as a hobby. All right, well, thank you very much. Congratulations. Officer Burrell has a few documents for you to sign. Thank you.
Translation by telepathy into a state of consciousness. Love is fixed for truth as it battles the struggle for life. Exploring sensation under amazing constellation. Captivated by an eclipse. Take a long flight. Together we share the mystery. We long to caress in heights of ecstasy.
A natural progression. Come on and give in to this feeling. These days, everywhere I look, things are in a craze. All I see are helicopters looking down at me. I hear the sound of bombs from all around. On the
globes warming while your body's burning calories. You're my begs to be released. You're my begs to be released. Should materialize before the rise, confirm future time to unlighten minds. Physically manifest to divine body, soul, and mind intertwined.